discuss important issues of peace and sustainability in Africa and around the world. It's a pleasure having you all, and I warmly welcome you to this discussion today, where we have the pleasure of having Professor Piotr Balcerowicz, who is joining us from Warsaw now, or Munich?
Warsaw.
From Warsaw in Poland. And it's a huge pleasure having you. And I'd like to welcome everybody on board who is on this call. I will say a few words about the topic for today, and especially about the speaker. The theme is India, the dysfunctional state of human rights. And Professor Balcerowicz is a professor of Indian philosophy and history, Sanskrit, and Indology, also teaching international relations and conflict management. Currently is a professor at the University of Warsaw in Poland, former professor at the University of Munich, Germany, and the professor at Ashoka University, India. He's also visiting professor at the University of Hamburg, Germany, and at the University of the Punjab, Lahore, Pakistan. He has also published quite a lot. And of course, we can, for example, mention the book Kashmir in India and Pakistan Policies, Human Rights Violations in Kashmir, and Law and Conflict Resolution in Kashmir, which have recently been published. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our presenter for today. Thank you again for joining us. And I would like to ask everybody who is on this call to please mute your microphones so that we can have a clear communication, and of course, accept the speaker. And so, Piotr, you're welcome. You may start and may share your slide. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, George, for inviting me to this workshop, to the series of lectures. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you and to talk about India. Indeed, I will share, if you allow me, I will share some slides with you, which will help us to communicate, to just a second here, I'm trying to okay, share now. Yeah, this will help us a lot. Normally we think of India in terms of two largest countries in the world, probably soon the largest country in the world, highly diversified, popularly known as a country of peace, spirituality, peaceful methods of conflict resolution. India portrays itself as the largest democracy in the world. In my talk, I will try to demonstrate that these descriptions of India are not quite accurate. And India has taken a path which seems to be a very dangerous path for the future, for itself, for its citizens, and probably for its neighbors and the world. India indeed is a very diversified country. As the first slide shows, its population structure by religion is diversified. The Hindus represent a clear majority, almost 80%. Muslims are a little more than 14%, some Christians, some Sikhs, very few Buddhists, some tribal religions, and some people say they follow no religion, they are either atheists, agnostics, and so on. Now, we can try to imagine India with 80% Hindu majority, with prime minister, president, speaker of the parliament, all the three most important posts in the state, who are recruited from the minorities, for instance, Muslims, Sikhs, or atheists. This would be rather surprising in many states of the world, but indeed India did have such a power structure once in these 3 years between 2004 and 2007. A Sikh was Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. India had a Muslim, Abdul Kalam, who also was a linguistic or ethnic minority, Tamil from Tamil Nadu. And also the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, or upper house of the parliament, was an atheist and communist, Somnath Chatterjee. So it was a symbolic gesture that reflected this complex structure of India. Nowadays, however, things have changed, and since that time, such a composition of the three most important posts in India is highly impossible. India has made a radical departure from its democratic values, and these values were originally, as enshrined in India's constitution, they were based on the ideals of secularism, religious neutrality, non-violent conflict management, and coexistence of divergent ethnicities, religious groups, and castes. There are lots of languages in India. Depending on what we call a language, how we distinguish a language from a dialect, we can speak of even 1,500 languages up to 10,000 languages in India. That's amazing. Also, there are lots of ethnicities. And India has always been shaped this way. This turning point took place several years ago, and India is indeed turning into an autocratic state, a state ruled by political, military, business kleptocracy. I will explain this in a moment. And this nexus has been developed by the Bharatiya Janata Party, or Indian People's Party. This Bharatiya Janata Party is closely linked, or is an offshoot of another important organization, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, that is National Volunteer Organization, which has its military wing. We could compare it even to organizations like Hitler Jugend. And also another important organization following the same ideology is Sangh Parivar, or family of the RSS, that is of this National Volunteer Organization. So there are lots of smaller parties or groups, smaller, larger parties that have the same ideology. The central person in this setup is the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. Once implicated in pogroms in 2002, and there are strong reasons to think that he was instrumental in these pogroms. That's why he was banned to visit European Union or USA for years, a suspect of the pogrom. India has experienced a process of centralization of all its institutions of the unified political umbrella under this Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP. And what provides its strong ideological agenda is the term Hindutva, Hinduness. We may call it Hindu fascism. When I say fascism, I mean an authoritarian or even totalitarian outlook based on the exclusion of minorities, majoritarian, with strong underpinnings of populism and recourse to traditional religious values, like once in Italy. India is, as the largest democracy, is a myth. we can not speak of India as the largest democracy in the world. Because, well, many observers now would describe India as illiberal democracy, defective democracy, but these are oxymorons. Imperfect water, polluted water, is not a water which is potable, which we can drink. So these are labels, and I don't particularly like such terms as illiberal democracy or defective democracy. These are misnomers. They simply accept a process when people elect their representation. However, the representation is already determined from the outset. So it's well, this kind of democracy resembles a political theater. India has ranked in various reports like Democracy Index, Freedom in the World, poorly. It is now, it is ranked there as flawed democracy. It is closing the gap with Pakistan, which is there, features there as hybrid regime. And both India and Pakistan are now in the same category of partly free. This is important because India always portrayed itself against Pakistan. It always showed Pakistan as undemocratic regime ruled by the military. But India has followed exactly the same path in recent years. Just to show how India ranks in the democracy index, it's still quite good. The scale is from 0 lowest to the highest 10. So once India ranked as 35 in the world, now it's 46, it's dropped. Pakistan still ranks much worse, but it is improving gradually. Also in Freedom in the World, India once was considered free. Now it is partly free. Pakistan was not free. Now it is partly free. The gap is closing. I will come to the issue of Kashmir, India and Pakistan Kashmir in a moment. So India gradually backslides towards autocratic regime. Also, another such important report, democracy report, the latest one, includes India among the world top 10 autocratizers, so countries that are turning into autocracies. India gradually oscillated in middle ranges, never truly democratic, but it oscillated between the range of 0.53, 0.61 since its independence. In the last years, since 2014, that is since the BJP and Narendra Modi are ruling India, India plummeted to 0.33. It is the lowest since India's independence in 1947. There was one period, emergency of Indira Gandhi, which was an exception for a short time. As always, at the UN Human Rights Council, there are regular evaluations of member states, and the fourth such evaluation of India human rights record took place in November last year under this periodic review in Geneva, and India had to face an extensive list of serious criticism, and I will just list most important ones, but the list is very long. First, religious intolerance, violence attacks, discrimination, hate speech against minorities, primarily Muslims. When we speak of majoritarian India, so the main target and scapegoat are Muslims, considered not considered proper citizens of India. Now, various forms of violence, discrimination against and inequality of women, caste-based abuse, including sexual abuse and humiliation, torture, forced bribery, illegal arrests, exclusion, poverty, forced labor or slavery, and child labor. Now, the problem with misuse of laws, that is rampant, regular and wide-ranging misuse, the ultra-virus nature and illegitimacy of a wide spectrum of preventive and counter-terrorism laws and similar legislation. I will be talking about these in a moment. So this legislation is used against human rights defenders, religious minorities, and journalists. Prolonged and unwarranted detention of human rights activists and ordinary citizens, up to 24 months without trial. Curbs on freedom of expression and opinion. Anti-conversion laws that infringe on the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of religion and belief. For instance, there are laws which forbid a change of religion. If someone changes his or her religion from Hinduism to, say, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, that person may be prosecuted and put in jail. State regulations that may lead to statelessness, deprivation or denial of nationality, arbitrary detentions or expulsions for Indian citizens. New laws were introduced more than 2 years ago, and under these laws, indeed, a few million Indians may face a situation when they are deprived of their citizenship. They become stateless. These laws are, by the way, these laws violate Indian constitution, but the court's judiciary, as you will see, also supports the policies of BJP, and in fact, judiciary is partly controlled by the politicians. A broad spectrum of violations of civil and citizen rights, including tightening restrictions on civil society and sophisticated measures that result in stranglehold on human civil rights organizations. The list is much longer. I will come to discuss some of these in details in a moment. Further, unconstitutional dismantling of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir joined India in 1947 under several conditions which guaranteed the state of Jammu and Kashmir full autonomy, except primarily for international relations and defense, military defense, and some expenditure. Otherwise, Jammu and Kashmir received guarantees, constitutional guarantees, that it would remain autonomous. This autonomy has been dismantled. There is no state of Jammu and Kashmir any longer in India. Now, the criticism at the UN session also focused on the fate of Jammu and Kashmir and its population, which, I quote, remains a blind side in the Universal Periodic Review. India simply does not want to reveal any information on what is happening there. Jammu and Kashmir, by the way, for instance, is the longest case of complete internet and telephone blackout in the world ever. And most of the year, Kashmiris have no access to the internet for the last couple of years. Children there, as young as 12 years old, are detained by Indian security forces. Civilians, including children, are shot and blinded with pellet guns by Indian forces. And even though the names of the perpetrators are known, the faces of soldiers who shot children and adults are known, no one is ever prosecuted. Two very extensive reports were prepared by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. The report on the situation of human rights in Kashmir in 2018 and its update a year later. These are very important reports, damaging for India, but they change nothing. There have been a number of other reports, international, local. I will just list here a few of these, like reports by Institute of Kashmir Studies. These reports are illegal in India. A position of these reports may put you in jail for years. You are not allowed to have these reports under your house. About 40 such reports have been published. They document atrocities of Indian forces committed in Kashmir. I'm in possession of most of these, but this was not easy to get these. Reports by International Commission of Jurists, Amnesty International, Asia Watch, Human Rights Watch, Jammu Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society, the Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons, and the latest one, Imprisoned Resistance, 5th August and its aftermath, published in 2019. This is on the dismantling of the autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir. I should mention that most people who have produced these reports are now in Indian jails. And they have been held in these jails indefinitely without any trial. Now, Jammu and Kashmir, as we see on the map, this is this little spot here where Pakistan, India, and China meets. And Jammu and Kashmir is the most militarized region of the world. The ratio of armed personnel per civilians is as 1 to 16 in last 3 years. That is 1 soldier, armed soldier per 16 civilians. You have soldiers everywhere on every spot. In front of every grocery, there is a soldier in Kashmir. You cannot imagine such a situation in a state which deems democratic. Kashmir is one of few regions, I will mention some others, where we find something which I personally call 4-pack. The 4-pack, that is an industrialized persecution of civilians. This includes 4 elements: enforced disappearances, illegal detentions, torture, and extrajudicial killings. Thousands of people have experienced this in India. People disappear, that is, they are kidnapped by the police or by the security or by the army. They are held illegally and no one knows where these people are held. They undergo torture. Sometimes mutilated bodies are disposed somewhere in forests, so we know what had happened to these people. And very often they are killed extrajudicially in jail or under torture. As I say, there are thousands of such examples. The statistics, and these are official statistics, once published by the Interior Ministry of India, more than 70,000 Kashmiris have been killed since 1989. Just imagine these numbers, for instance, in the United States or in Europe, for instance, in France or Germany. It is unthinkable, and these have been killed by Indian armed forces. There are more than 6,000 unmarked mass graves of victims of Indian forces. There may be more, but the Indian army puts the bodies into unmarked mass graves. The numbers are high, they go in thousands of these people. There is no investigation proper in India to investigate, to discover what has happened. More than 8,000 people have disappeared, that is, have been kidnapped by the Indian forces and then killed. A number of perpetrators, army, police, are known by name, but no one, not a single person, not a single officer has been brought to justice. Indian armed forces and the police are protected by special laws which guarantee them immunity from any persecution. And Indian army has to approve any persecution that civil courts might start. I said I would return to the status of Indian Kashmir and Pakistani Kashmir, again, in the ranking of freedom in the world. Indian Kashmir once ranked as partly free, now it is not free at all. The same as Kashmir administered by Pakistan, also not free. Practically the situation, as we see in the numbers, 27 in India, 29 in Pakistan, the situation in India administered Kashmir is worse now than in Pakistan administered Kashmir. What is important, the legal status of Jammu and Kashmir is still undetermined, despite Indian claims to the contrary. So far, the largest and most detailed analysis of the legal status of Jammu and Kashmir under international law can be found in my recent book, Law and Conflict Resolution in Kashmir, published by Routledge last year. As I emphasize, the violations of human rights in India are both systemic and systematic. Systemic means they are a part of the legal system and political setup in India. They are meant to be there in place. So Indian political system and legal system not only makes the violations of human rights possible, but also encourages these human rights violations. Further, these violations are systematic. They are not occasional that happen here and there. They are permanent, continuous, and they are embedded in the ideological political setup of the Indian state. I claim that India's political system is a complex mix of kleptocracy, plutocracy, and oligarchy. Kleptocracy means that individuals, businessmen, for instance, politicians, through political connections and through political power, receive access to goods, to the finances, funds of the state. And this happens in India. Those who are associated to the ruling party, BJP, of Narendra Modi, they become rich, they make fortunes through these connections, and their fortunes are fed by taxpayers' money in India. Plutocracy, this is a state of the rich, and indeed India is ruled by those who have access to wealth. And it is also oligarchy. I don't have to explain this. So India fulfills these three definitions. In this sense, India is the world's largest pseudo-democracy, or simply the largest soft authoritarianism. India is ruled by a mix of politicians, the military, the intelligence, the business, and the media. I will also try to demonstrate how this works. Legal ramifications, because this is the precondition of systemic violations of human rights. These legal ramifications are deliberately ill-defined and fashioned in a way that they help the political stakeholders to retain their grip on power and succeed in their objectives. These laws, these legal ramifications allow for legal black holes. And through these black holes, thanks to them, the direct or actual agents, direct perpetrators, actual agents, and indirect perpetrators, their political principles, may act with impunity and remain beyond any accountability. I've just mentioned one of such cases. Officers of Indian Army, soldiers, the police, who kill with impunity unarmed, peaceful civilians, face no charges. And this is legal in India. It is interesting that out of 18 international human rights treaties, which form the backbone of international human rights regime, India ratified only 8 and performs worse than Pakistan. I don't want to go through this list, but for instance, what is important, second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It aims at abolition of the death penalty. India that is not concerned with this. This is why we have problem with death penalty in India. Also, Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment or Punishment has not been ratified or accessed by India. Pakistan has done it, India has not. This is important, and why I will explain in a moment. Also, International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. India is not a part of this treaty. Why are these treaties important? Because they allow, as you will show in you will see in a moment, they allow for systemic violations of human rights. I said that Jammu and Kashmir is one of such troublesome regions, troublesome considered by the central government, where human rights violations are perpetrated on regular basis. the eastern state, as you see in the map, the eastern state of India, like Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland. So these are the regions which are problematic for Indian central government, the Jammu and Kashmir here, and the so-called Red Corridor, which runs through India. It is also called the Compact Revolutionary Zone by Naxalites, so Maoists who operate there with very strong support of local population. I don't have time to explain the problems here, but they're also very grave. So as you see, most of India is directly affected by human rights violations and a state of semi-civil war, where Indian government treats the population of these regions as foreign population under occupation. The failure to ratify these vital international conventions on human rights allow for pre-designed legal loopholes in the system. As a result, the offenders enjoy practical immunity, and this concerns the whole apparatus of state violence, the armed forces, paramilitary, police, intelligence agencies, and so on. For instance, not accessing to the Convention Against Torture allows for a situation when torture is a non-punishable offense. There is nothing like torture in Indian legal system. Torture is not simply beating up a person. However, if torture is not defined in Indian legal system, it does not exist. So no one can be prosecuted for torture. No soldier, no police officer. Similarly, not accessing to the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance makes the enforced abduction by the army a non-punishable offense. So if a person, civilian, is kidnapped, tortured, this does not count as enforced disappearance. This is simply comparable to ordinary kidnapping, which has a different legal state, which is, I mean, is not as grave as enforced disappearance perpetrated by apparatus of state violence. So, in short, there is absence of adequate protection of human rights. As a result, a range of legal acts in India are incompatible both with international standards of human rights regime and with Indian constitution itself. This is a long list of laws that are examples of such status. These are the laws which allow for human rights violations, which encourage human rights violations, and these are the laws which, for instance, makes perpetrators like soldiers immune from responsibility. For instance, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Interestingly, it was introduced under British occupation of India in 1942 in order to crush the Quit India movement. It was an important movement for independence. However, India has retained these laws. The Terrorist Disruptive Activities Prevention Act, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and so on. There are a number of such anti-terrorism acts. I will mention just one specifically, the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act of 2010. This bans NGOs from receiving foreign funds unless these are reported. This served as an example of Russia's foreign agent laws of 2012. So India was the first to introduce these laws, and Russia followed the suit 2 years later. In both these states, NGOs cannot operate freely. They cannot receive foreign funding unless they classify themselves as foreign agents. So India served as an example for such draconic laws in Russia. So under this rich anti-terrorist legislation, Any dissent is criminalized, civil liberties are curbed, freedom of speech and free media are restricted, social activists or human rights defenders are selectively targeted and anti-state. Collective punishment of civilians is administered. These laws allow for so-called preventive custody for up to 2 years without trial or bail. It happens that after 24 months, the person with no charges is released from jail. The next day, the person is arrested again and held for another 24 months. This is what we observe, for instance, in the occupied territories of Palestine. Organizations and individuals can be designated as terrorists under mere suspicion. No evidence is required. They are designated as terrorists under mere suspicion that they might be terrorists, and they remain in detention almost indefinitely without any trial under mere suspicion. As I say, the police does not have to produce any evidence for that. Innocent civilians, as a result, are jailed or killed as alleged militants by officers who in this way score points and expedite their careers. Why is this important? Because very often army officers are interested in kidnapping civilians and in staging so-called direct encounters with the militants. In this way, when they produce the evidence that they killed some terrorists, they get promoted, they expedite their careers. This is encouraged by these laws. There are lots of such cases when innocent civilians have been killed as alleged militants with no evidence. Demolition of houses is used as a punishment, collective punishment. For instance, activists, human rights activists, very often are punished for their activities by demolition of their houses, of the houses which they do not own, but the houses which belong to their families. Again, this is the pattern which we know very well from Palestine. So it's the same scenario. No non-governmental organizations are suspended or delegalized. For instance, Amnesty International India was suspended in September 2020. So Amnesty International is not allowed to operate in India any longer. It is banned. Many other organizations, international organizations, are banned from making any investigation on human rights in India. This is why we do not have any more statistics, data on the situation in India anymore, because Narendra Modi government bans any international organizations from carrying out such research in India. The agents of the apparatus of state violence, the army, the police, can operate with impunity because they are protected by these anti-terrorist laws. I just mentioned some of these, and they will be never prosecuted. They will be never put before courts. As I have mentioned, no single officer implicated in such fake encounters, that is killing civilians under the pretext that these are militants, and no officer implicated in killings of innocent civilians has ever been brought to justice, even though their names are known, their faces are known, but they remain safe, protected by these laws. There is no clear separation of powers in India that would counterbalance each other. Pakistan, when we speak of Pakistan, for instance, the important term is establishment or deep state. This is a mixture of the military top brass and inter-services intelligence. This is the main intelligence bureau, Federal Investigation Agency. So this is the mix of the military and the intelligence which run the state of Pakistan. And this leads to the so-called milbus, military business. Most of business in Pakistan is run by this establishment. India has developed a very similar power structure. It was not like that after independence, but India in recent 2 decades has followed the same path. So we find in India, we find a very similar toxic blend of politics, the military, religion, and this blend undermines the separation of powers principle. For instance, the deployment of the military, when it is deployed in conflict areas such as Jammu and Kashmir, this red zone that cuts across India, the military enjoys special financial benefits to the service people. This deployment serves as a launch pad for the officers' future careers within the army ranks as politicians and diplomats. So if an officer can make political or diplomatic career while serving in these regions. So this all, I just provide some examples, but this leads to a noxious nexus between the military, the intelligence, and the politics. This is a long list. I provide a few names, but I will not go through this list. But this is a handful of examples of top-rank officers who once stationed in Jammu and Kashmir, and their service in Jammu and Kashmir propelled them to top political careers. This list is long. I'm not going to read this, but these are the people who became the chief of the staff, who became MPs, who became ambassadors of India. They all contribute these political careers to their service in these conflict zones of India. Why is it a problematic issue? Because such a liaison between the military and politics, or diplomacy, or of education fulfills a few toxic roles. It allows for this liaison transfers a particular set of battlefield perspective, barracks mentality, and military intelligence problem-solving know-how into politics, state policies, and laws. The state and politics of India operates on military basis, with military mindset. Further, this liaison between the military and politics tints civilian optics and conflict management strategies with order-based, undemocratic style of decision-making process. So India is ruled like the army. Further, this liaison introduces informal power networks into the civilian environment, because the generals who become politicians, they also bring other soldiers into the political system of civilian India. This liaison disturbs the civilian control of the army and intelligence. This liaison allows for these so-called anti-terrorist laws, which are incompatible with any democratic standards. This liaison allows for the misuse of power and creates fertile soil for violations of human rights and makes the perpetrators immune. So laws are constructed to protect the army, because the laws are designed by people who once served in the army. Further, the armed forces and intelligence are most often implicated in reports as actual violators of human rights. At the same time, they are protected by the laws they make themselves. Now, what is Hindutva? Literally translated, this is Hinduness. It's the political agenda and ideology of the state, which has 3 important aspects: Hindu nation, Hindu race, Hindu culture. It's majoritarian. It excludes all minorities, including the largest minority of more than 14% of Muslims. Hindutva, we can call it political Hinduism. It's a parallel to jihadism or political Islam. And India is run on the principle of Hindutva, this political fascism, this Hindu fascism or political Hinduism. We may speak of a process of saffronization of most or all public institutions. Saffronization, the term comes from saffron, the color which politicians, Hindutva politicians, these Hindu politicians, the color which they use, it is associated with this Hindutva ideology. So for those who do not know this term, saffronization simply means turning public institutions into institutions tinged or suffused with Hindutva ideology. The army plays and the intelligence play an immense role in this process of saffronization. There is intimate linkage with politics behind the scenes. Secularism and religious neutrality are compromised. This leads to state-promoted glorification of armed forces. Armed forces are simply the most important institution in India, just like in Pakistan. The army is involved in various activities closely associated with Hinduism, labeled national or cultural. For instance, yoga has become an important practice supported by the army. And yoga, as a result, yoga has been politicized and militarized. That is, army officers also operating in Jammu and Kashmir, where they violate human rights, they stage workshops on yoga. Yoga, this peaceful practice, spiritual practice, has become a part of military strategy of India, which is completely bizarre. The influence of the army on public sphere is also technical, material, and logistical. The army provides this kind of support, technical, material, and logistical, to politicized Hindu festivities organized by Hindutva organizations. In other words, the army, the intelligence work hand in hand with fascist, Hindu fascist parties and organizations. And of course, money and political power. The army gets money and political power through this linkage with politics. Just a good example, military expenditure in India in last decades, in real US dollars, as you see how the budget of the army rose. These are constant real change. The defense during Narendra Modi's era since 2014 doubled. The defense budget doubled. So army, through its involvement in politics, gets real benefits. At the same time, we notice a wide approval rate of the military. This is the military. The military is the most popular organization or institution in India. They enjoy around 90% of support among Indians. For comparison, human organizations enjoy less support. Interestingly, we have no latest data because, as I mentioned, organizations are not allowed to carry out such research in India anymore, practically not allowed. Interestingly, only 37 respondents in India believe it is very, I quote, believe it is very important for human rights organizations to operate freely in their country. So Indians are not concerned with human rights organizations at all, because they believe that the army can fulfill this role better than human rights organizations. This compares to such a support for human rights organizations in Russia, 31%. So it's dramatic. Another interesting element is that according to the majority of Indians, India's best achievement lies in the military area. This is what India can offer the world. So Indians in the majority, vast majority, think that the best India can give the world is their military. The scientific achievements, medical treatment, university education rank much below. The armed forces are considered as the backbone of India. And this is an interesting paradox of a conflict with values, because traditionally declared values in India are non-violence or non-injury, ahimsa, or civil resistance or non-violent action, satyagraha. These are values broadly associated in the world with India. Civil resistance, non-violent action, yeah? The methods used by Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, the Solidarity Trade Union in Poland in the early 90s, yeah, this peaceful revolution in Berlin, so-called tore down that wall. So all these civil movements in the world benefited from these values of civil resistance, non-violence, non-violent action. However, these values are not considered important in India anymore. Sheer power is more important. So we can speak of an impact, immense impact of the military mindset, which is transferred into the public sphere. As a result, India prefers a recourse to assault and violent measures rather than peaceful methods of conflict resolution. Interesting statistics again. The support for autocratic rule in India is rising. Before, the support was in middle ranges, around 40%. When Narendra Modi in 2014 got power, suddenly the support for autocratic rule in India rose up to 70%. We do not have any fresh data for the same reason. You cannot investigate this in India freely. So we can speak that also in public mind in India, the public mind in India has abandoned the ideals of democracy. This is all related to the era of Narendra Modi and his personality cult. You can see Narendra Modi everywhere, on every wall. Wherever you turn your face, you see the face of Narendra Modi. We can speak of India's essence, which is defined along the lines of the politically motivated myth of one nation, one Hindu realm, one Hindu leader. According to these values, Hindu nation, Hindu realm, and one leader. Well, unsurprisingly, this brings us back to the saying ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer during Hitler time. It is not a coincidence because Hitler enjoys a large popularity in India. There are cafes named after Hitler. Public trust in politicians, in strong government also rose. As you see, in 2007-8, the support was not that big, but suddenly at the time of Narendra Modi, when Narendra Modi, the populist fascist regime, got power, the support for this regime rose suddenly. This centralized tight control of all crucial institutions in India also affects system of education and the media. System of education in India and the media, system of education and the media also follow the Hindutva agenda. They are politicized and ideological. Unsurprisingly, India scores poorly in Freedom Press Index. Many numbers, very complex. I don't have time to explain this, but India once ranked 80 in the world. Now it is 150. Pakistan ranked 119. Now it is just behind India, 157. India has no free speech, free media, free press anymore. Interestingly, again, only 32% of Indian respondents find free speech, uncensored media, and internet freedom important. It is the lowest among all surveyed countries in the world. The median is 64%. So Indians are not bothered by these developments. They're not troubled by the poor media. Interestingly, again, the number of those who find these rights of freedom important decreased under BJP rule, under Narendra Modi. Now, kleptocrization, the process of becoming rich through the links to power, it escalated dynamically since the BJP and Narendra Modi came to power. There was first such tide when BJP was in power between 1998 and 24, and then again after 2014 till now. These developments started when Narendra Modi became the chief minister of Gujarat, the state of Gujarat in India, the stage of the pogroms, which barred Narendra Modi from entering the US and European Union as suspected criminal. Of course, when he became the Prime Minister of India, these bans were lifted. I just mentioned three persons, but there's a lot of business people who made their careers through political links. Before they were poor people. Now they are the richest in India and the richest in the world. Gautam Adani, in fact, there are two brothers, and Adani Group. Once it was the world's third richest man till January this year. Yeah? You may remember Hindenburg research, which revealed that this business is fake. It was the largest business in India, and Gautam Adani was the richest person, in the third richest in the world. He made his career through the links to BJP. Mukesh Ambani and his company Reliance Industries. Except for Gautam Adani, Mukesh Ambani was the richest person in India and Asia. Now he's again the richest. Before Gautam Adani, Ambani was the richest, now he's the richest again. Another person, also one of the richest in India, Subhash Chandra and Essel Group. All these three are very close associates of Narendra Modi. They have very close links to the ruling party BJP, and they have made their careers and business and money through political links. And importantly, these three, Adani, Ambani, and Chandra, they control most of the media in India. 95% of TVs are controlled by these three people. So BJP controls tightly all the media and the internet in India. There is no free speech in India anymore. Indians, surprisingly, are satisfied also with their system of justice. Only 58% of the Indian population consider a fair judicial system important. In other words, Indians don't care whether the system of justice works fine or not. It's the lowest, again, among all surveyed countries in the world. Significantly lower than a median of 82%. Most people in the world would consider a fair system of justice important, not in India. There is also an important rule of law index. Again, India performs poorly, and we see deterioration in how India performs. I don't have time, so I will not go into details. Justice in India is highly problematic. The courts are understaffed, the police and judges are corrupt. Courts are overburdened with backlogs of cases. Sometimes you wait for years, 7, 10 years you spend in arrest. And then after 10 years, you are declared innocent. It is not unusual in India. There are numerous cases of intimidation, beatings, and torture at police stations. No one gets prosecuted. Detentions without trial that extend to 24 months, sometimes even longer. Again, I mentioned this, the so-called 4 packs of abuse. Jails are overcrowded. The process of granting bail is problematic and delayed. In India, India has one of the highest numbers of prisoners in pre-trial detention, so they are so-called under trials. In other words, almost 80% of all prisoners are in jail and awaiting trial. Global average is little more than 30%. Interestingly, almost 98% arrested under a mere suspicion of terrorism are convicted. Just 2% of these people are convicted. In other words, most people serve in jails under suspicion of terrorism, and they are innocent, but they may spend years in Indian jails under mere suspicion, even though they are proved to be innocent in the end. People are sentenced to death and executed in India without proper evidence. The number of executions have suddenly risen during Modi's era, Narendra Modi's era. And the last thing, Narendra Modi's government attempts to exercise complete direct control over India's courts. This is the case which we now face in Israel, when the government of Israel tries to control the appointment of judges and the judicial system. It's like in Hungary or Poland. I'm just coming to close. but some more important elements to the end. These new values, fascist values of Hinduism, Hindutva values, are transmitted through various channels, including education. I don't have time to talk about this, but film industry, Bollywood, and show business is one of these channels. There are important changes in the era of Narendra Modi since 2014. Most of producers, directors, actresses, actors are styling themselves nowadays as passionately BJP enthusiastic or hyper-patriotic. I just mentioned some of the stars. They openly support Hindutva values. Previous actors, previous film stars, all of them Muslims, they are out. Also, the Hindi language of Bollywood films has been purified. That is, all terminology, all words that are derived from Urdu or Persian, they have been removed to get rid of this linkage to Islamic past of India. Lots of new propagandistic or so-called patriotic films have been made, and these are very important. These are very, very popular. They are supported by BJP and Hindutva organizations. I just mentioned some of these films: Razi, Gunjan Saxena. All these four films, interestingly, they concern Kashmir. The latest film, The Kashmir Files, it is packed with, I have watched these films. The latest one, the most popular film in India nowadays. It is packed with grave historical distortions, with factual inaccuracies and blatant lies. And it spreads anti-Muslim hate speech. To the extent the film was shown as Indian film at the latest International Film Festival of India. But the jury of the festival denounced this film as propaganda, vulgar movie, inappropriate for an artistic competitive section of such a prestigious film. Another important element, how film industry is used to transmit Hindutva values and how anti-Muslim sentiments are transmitted. This is the case of a film Padmavati. No one watched this film before the first screening in 2017, but BJP affiliates accused the film director of anti-Hindu sentiments. The film was censored and re-released under new title Padmavat in 2018. Interestingly, the film director Sanjay Leela Bhansali and the main actress Deepa Padukone, bounties were placed to behead both of them. They received thousands of death threats. A BJP politician, that is a leader of the ruling party BJP, he himself announced an award of more than €1 million to chop off the actress' head. These actions received no condemnation from Narendra Modi, from Indian government, even though the person who put the bounty to behead the actress was one of the leaders of the ruling party. There is an important film which anyone who is interested in the issue of Jammu and Kashmir should watch, Haider. This film was made prior to the era of Narendra Modi. This film is impossible now in India. Even though it is the best cinematographic achievement of the film director, it is, in my opinion, one of the most passionate and most powerful politically engaged pictures ever made in India. I'm coming to the close. India has become world's largest stage of public incitement to and preparation for genocide. These are not words which are too strong. The term genocide has been used in the public sphere in India in recent years. There are calls for genocide, that is for the extermination of all Muslims in India in recent years. And these calls come from BJP activists, from BJP politicians, from different Hindutva organizations linked to the ruling party. Some of you may know Gregory Stanton. He's behind the Genocide Watch. Genocide Watch is an organization that has done a lot of research on genocide, and it warns about genocide emergency in different countries. India is #1 in the world. I quote from the report of Genocide Watch. Genocide Watch recognizes the Modi BJP government's state-sponsored attack on the Muslim community as stage 6 polarization, stage 7 preparation, and stage 8 persecution. Modi's statements at Aligarh Muslim University, perversely claiming that his new laws are intended to uplift the Muslim community, demonstrate stage 10 denial. In short, Genocide Watch distinguishes 10 stages of genocide, including the Holocaust of Jews. And according to their research, in India, we have 9 stages there. Only 1 stage is still missing. This is the stage 9, the actual extermination. So India is facing now the real specter of genocide. Interestingly, some of you may have heard of the film BBC documentary of January this year, India, the Modi Question. This also throws much light on the developments in India and also on the role of Narendra Modi, responsible for the pogroms of Gujarat, for the death of 2,000 people, for his involvement, direct personal involvement in this pogrom. The film is banned. It's very difficult to watch it online. If anyone wants to watch, I have the links, which are still acting. But remember, this film is banned in India, legally banned. For anyone who wants to learn more about the developments on human rights in Kashmir, I can also refer you to 2 more books. I mentioned one of my books published last year. There are 2 more published in the same series: Human Rights Violations in Kashmir and Kashmir in India and Pakistan Policies. Thank you so much. You may have some comments or questions. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Piotr, for this analysis. It's quite rich and has made us, I think, really think quite a lot and deeply about India, the second largest democracy in the world, the land of Mahatma Gandhi, that we know for its non-violent philosophy and actions. And now, of course, it's time for us to also kind of express our own response to your presentation. I would like to invite people in this call, and so please raise your hand or put your question in chat. And so whoever is willing to start, please. Thomas Duffin, please.
Right. Hello. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Piotr, thank you so much for your brilliant talk. I have to say it's very disturbing to listen to, and you were certainly giving us a lot of facts and data that really, really vital. I wanted you to just tell us a bit about your personal life story. How did you get interested in this issue? Have you traveled to Kashmir? Is this based on your own personal, evidence trail? What's your own academic trajectory into this? Because the work you're doing is so important. I'm sorry to say I'd never heard of you before today, but now I wonder why on earth not. And you echo the thoughts of Sam Pitroda, who spoke to us last time, who is involved with the Congress Party and is a genuine lover of Indian democracy. I think, there are people trying to fight back. There are genuine Indian intellectuals who who still retain Nehru's faith in secularism and so on. So one of my questions would be, have you had any contact with them? Your report would make us all want to go and jump off a cliff in despair, but I would like to say maybe there is hope. But tell us about your background. How did you start? And I also had a final question, which is, have you been up to the Pakistan administered parts of Kashmir? How does that compare in your personal experience? Thank you very much.
I would say I spent a large part of my life in India. I have visited India at least 40 times. I have studied there. I was a student of Banaras Hindu University as a researcher. Probably 1/3 of my life I spent in India this way or another. So I know it from my direct personal experience. I teach Sanskrit and other Indian languages, Pali, Prakrit. I have visited Pakistan many times, perhaps 15 times. And I have personally been to both parts of Kashmir, Indian administered and Pakistani administered Kashmir. This has not always been easy. Sometimes I had to be smuggled into some parts of Kashmir. Very often in India, but also in Pakistan, I was followed by intelligence agents who were just behind me. So it's never been easy to do research in Indian administered Kashmir and Pakistan administered Kashmir. I like India a lot. This is why I devoted so much time of my life to the study of India and Indian culture. I observed the developments with great sorrow over the decades, because for the first time, I was in the mid-80s. So I experienced India when it was still socialist, with no private business, with no free media, when the media were controlled and the large business was controlled by the state. Then I could experience the privatization of India, the transformation, economic and political transformation of India. So I have experienced India through all its stages since the mid-80s. And in my research, I always try to be as unbiased and as possible. But unfortunately, the criticism voiced by various organizations in the world is justified. India is sliding towards autocracy very swiftly. So I hope this answers you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for this response and for the question, Thomas and Piotr. And Frank, please, you have a hand up. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that lucid presentation. I must admit that it has been also shocking to me, because I see they always say India is the largest democracy. I would like just to ask, what is happening to a party like the Congress? Has it lost any edge to fight back and win like the prime ministership from Modi and BJP?
I'm afraid it's very unlikely. Congress has lost its appeal to people for various reasons. Partly it's the problem with a very peculiar politics of India, which is based on dynasties. Pakistan, the Bhutto family, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, his daughter, and now his grandson. And in India, Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, and so on. This does not contribute to a healthy democratic system in the first place. So structurally, Congress has this problem because it focused on the family linkage. At the same time, Congress has not been able to produce any sustainable, clear, and attractive offer to Indians. In terms of the communication with Indian population, BJP has been extremely successful. Unfortunately, this is the problem with most populists. They are successful in communicating their ideals, and they do not bother whether they are feasible or not. Indian economy has deteriorated a lot in the Modi era. It was fine till 2016, 2017, but after 2017, we find a gradual slide in economic performance. This was there before the COVID era. The COVID era only exacerbated and accelerated this process. But somehow Modi won the elections in 2019 again, and I suspect he will win again, because all the machinery of the state now serves one party. This is the problem. What we face in India is very similar to 1933, where in Germany, in the Third Reich, when Hitler got power. He got power through democratic means. Narendra Modi and BJP got power through democratic means. But they do not need democracy to maintain their grip on power. Hitler was very swift. The country was much smaller. India is large, difficult to control. Many things have to be put in order. But we see a very similar development in India, when India is turning into a Hindu fascist state, when all education, all media, all press, all internet is tightly controlled by the centralized power. This is very important. India is ruled by a very centralized elite, which combines politicians, the military intelligence, business, and the media. This is why I call it a mix of kleptocracy, oligarchy, and plutocracy. And through this very peculiar mix, India and BJP may be almost certain to remain in power. The Congress does not enjoy, so the Congress has many problems. One of these is the problem of their appeal to the wider public. They have not been able to work out, as I have mentioned, a clear, attractive political program. Another problem is, even if they had such a program, they would face a problem how to communicate this program to wider public. An attempt has been made recently with the so-called Jatra from the south to the north of Rahul Gandhi, when he and Congress politicians traveled across India. But it has resonated in very small circles, mostly those who are interested in getting rid of BJP, but the general public has not heard much of this because the media are controlled by BJP effectively. So you don't really hear on standard TV channels anything much about the Congress and this campaign. Yeah, so I'm afraid new elections will bring BJP again to power, and we may face a change of Indian constitution in the future. This is, I would say it is almost certain, in my opinion, when Narendra Modi India will have new constitution.
Thank you so much, Piotr. And now we go to Bati Jain, and then to Asa Mwambene. And I would like also to ask Howard Richards to say something about the Constitution. And probably Dr. Mishra might have a comment to make. So Bati Jain, please. Thank you.
My namaskar and Jai Shri to everybody. Yeah, Piotr, you shared a lot of insight in every area, but I'm not a political person, but just a simple question. Whatever you have shared, do you have any evidence of all that? I would like to have uh, evidences that shows the what you have shared is correct, so that we can work out on the things where we are lacking. Or it is just your thought, or so it's just your personal opinion, or it is evidence based.
As a researcher, I'm always very cautious to say anything for which I have no evidence. Then I would say probably, perhaps, it is not impossible that. But when I say what I have said, it means I have evidence. You will find my talk is based on the 3 books which I have just mentioned in my talk. A gist of my talk is in a paper which I have submitted now to George Mutalemwa for publication. So a gist of my talk, and expanded with all footnotes, is there, and you will find all the evidence. All the reports are there, all the websites, all the research is there. Not a single part of my talk has been based on my fanciful thoughts. As I say, I'm always very cautious when I describe a situation, whether I talk of the history of India, philosophy of India, the Indian past, or Indian presence.
Thank you. And
So
Asta,
what do you
please.
think is the right solution
Yes,
for that?
sorry, should I proceed or someone is asking?
Batijan, maybe of a quick just follow-up question.
Yeah, I was just asking what solution you could provide with the current situation.
This is the question I have been asking myself for years, because the deterioration of democratic institutions in India is not unique to India. Many countries formally considered democratic face the same problem. A good example is Israel, Turkey, Poland, where I currently live, Hungary. These are the countries which once were democratic, but they are now authoritarian or turning into authoritarian regimes. And the problem is how to stop it, how to prevent the further slide to authoritarianism in countries where the central power is controlled by a small group of people, by an elite, which has the access and control of the media and education. It's sadly to say, I think it's extremely difficult. And in most cases, empirical cases with such situation, these trajectories to authoritarianism end in violence. So in this sense, sadly, I must conclude that India is facing a real specter of genocide, of very violent events. They may be prevented, but it is this genocide with which I ended my talk is extremely real. The communalist conflicts which you have been observing in India on a regular basis, you have many more conflicts nowadays, such communal conflicts than before. For those who are not specialists in India, communal conflicts concern primarily Hindu-Muslim conflicts in India. These have always been there, but the scale and intensity has intensified under Narendra Modi. They may develop further. Perhaps some pressure from the outside world might change something. But this is again very unlikely. India is on the political stage is a potential ally. It's a potential ally of the United States. Well, the United States have a number of cooperation deals with India. The first such important one was in 2005 under George W. Bush, when India, under which India got new transfer of nuclear energy and so on. So India is considered an important ally by the European Union and by the United States, an ally to counterbalance China and Russia. So it is most unlikely, in my opinion, that the European Union and the United States will seriously criticize India on its human rights performance or violations. India is now working with the European Union to forge a free trade deal. It is one of such examples of close political cooperation between India and the West. The world, and this is what I have been claiming since the early 1990s, the world is preparing for an important military confrontation between the West and China. In the 90s, people thought I was nuts when I was saying these things. But now probably most of you realize that it is not so impossible. And I think within a generation, such a conflict, an open conflict, will be extremely real. And the world is preparing for that. So China is acting in order to get its allies, Russia and also large part of African states. The West is also organizing its allies for this confrontation in the future, such as South Korea, Japan, Australia, and India. So the problem is that there is no serious international force or party that would have a leverage on India to step back on its autocratization. And this is sad. So the last hope is a grassroots movement in India itself. This grassroots movement may face serious risks. I have mentioned a large list of laws which I emphasize are incompatible with the Constitution of India, but they are still in operation for decades. And grassroots activists can easily be taken off the stage. A number of my friends who are human rights activists are now in jail with no trial. They just disappeared. No one has contact with them. We know that they are in jail under the mere suspicion of terrorism, and they can be held there for years. The same may happen with grassroots activists who may try to change something in India. But like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, such activists should be prepared for long march, for long fight for democratic values. So I would say the only change may come from within, from the population of India, from activists who will appeal to the minds of Indians, who will educate Indians in an informal way, because the formal system of education of India is disastrous. Indian system of education teaches nonsense. I don't want to talk in detail unless someone is interested, but the system of education in India teaches very clear patriotic values. For instance, India has always been a top leader of the world with nuclear power stations 5,000 years ago, with spaceships flying to the moon 5,000 years ago, and so on. This is what you learn at school. This is what children learn at school, this nonsense. So this has to be counterbalanced by different grassroots organizations. It is not impossible, but it is extremely difficult.
Thank you so much, Piotr. I'll go to Asa Mwambene for
Yes.
a very short question or comment.
Yes,
Then I'll go to, sorry about, we're also running out of time. Asa, please.
Okay. I'll be very quick. Mine is just a comment. First, I want to agree with the speaker on most of the issues that he mentioned about the Muslims, but I just wanted to add that actually the major organizations that are sidelines like the Muslims are Christians in India. And we must understand that Boharat Gender Party, which is a BJP, was a party that was established as a fundamentalist groups of the Hindus. And, it grew up to the level of now usurping power in India. And the climax of BJP was more in 1999, when in 1999, we saw the visit of the Pope in 1999 in India was a clear demonstration that BJP was an organization which was anti-Christian and anti-Muslim. And for those who have lived in India, like me, we have always seen that India, Muslims and the Christians in India are almost one thing. Whatever that happened to either a Christian or an a Muslim, you see that the Christians rally together with the Muslims as minorities. By then, Indian Muslims were about 80 million. Now it is considered minority, but Christians were about 25 million. And but the most important thing that we must understand with the BJP policy all along from historical perspective is that with the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, BJP has always used Muslims as a claim of secularism, that India is one of the secular state, and therefore leaving Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir would be tantamount to like devaluing the very tentacles that make India to be a democratic country or secular state as it claims currently to be. So it's an issue that they will never cling out of that realm in terms of accommodating because when we talk about Jammu and Kashmir, we are actually talking about Muslims, because 100% this is a Muslim area. And of course, Pakistan is also one. So the tension is that on that line of control. But so the dynamics. I'm just finishing. Dynamics of the Christian and Muslim is they are suffering almost the same thing. And look at organizations like Vishwa Hindu Parishad or VHP, and there is another organization called Shiv Sena. These are two fundamentalist groups that grew up out of just all along with BJP, and they've always had a very negative sentiments against Christians and Muslims, and almost at the same level. To finish on one aspect of the genocide, the speaker touched a bit about the aspect of genocide in India. I just wanted to add a little comment that pronunciation of the genocide as a crime against humanity was first, although it has been there from the Vienna Convention from 1949, but the actual pronouncement was made during the Rwanda genocide. That this actually, what happened, for instance, in Rwanda, amounted to what now is called genocide. But before that the word genocide wasn't, being a precedence in the international criminal courts as it was after the Rwanda genocide. So whether what is happening in India amounts to genocide, I'm a bit skeptical about it. Thank you.
And now, thank you very much, Asa. Just quickly before Piotr can say something, if we can go to Howard for just a minute, if you'd like to make a comment. Howard? Please unmute your microphone. Howard Richards, do you hear me? Would you like to make a comment on the Constitution?
Well, I feel honored to be asked to comment. I certainly find all of this disturbing, and I rather whatever happened to Mahatma Gandhi and to the noble purposes of the Indian Constitution. I don't know whether our guests would like to respond to these great ideals which have inspired the rest of the world that have come from India.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then Helen will be the last one before Mishra, Dr. Mishra. Helen,
Yeah.
please.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Helen Bond from Howard University in Washington, D.C. Very much so the question that Howard Richard asked. I did a Fulbright in India a couple of years ago around peace education, looking at the role that Mahatma Gandhi played in Martin Luther King's direct action nonviolence, and I had to leave for a few minutes before the ending of your comments. I was just asking, what happened?
Mhm.
So
like that.
probably we need to continue this conversation next time, but I would like to ask Dr. Mishra for a word or comment, and then we can close this or adjourn this conversation. Dr. Mishra, please.
George, I must say, I feel honored that you invite my opinion. I must say, I enjoyed listening to this talk. And if I have to caption it, I will say it's eye-opener talk. And I also must say that if the whole world goes
Yeah, I would comment.
Something good which is not good, where if this is the situation, then what about international organizations? George, I am done.
Thank you very much indeed. And what a pleasure. Thank you very much all for your contributions. Maybe just one last sentence from Piotr, our speaker. It's just a delight having you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Just quickly to respond, as I mentioned, the last stage of genocide, the actual execution is missing. For this to happen, a political decision will have to be taken. Like in Rwanda. The genocide in Rwanda did not happen as a spontaneous act, as we very well know. And the same act, the same strategy will take place in India. If the government, if BJP and its affiliates are interested in the genocide for whatever reason, this will happen. If they are not interested, this will not happen. What happened to Mahatma Gandhi and his ideals? We should first remember that he was assassinated by Nathuram Godse. Nathuram Godse was an activist of RSS. RSS was banned for a short time because of being accused of complicity in the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi in 1948. Nathuram Godse has its temple. The temple was erected in 2015, a year after Narendra Modi prime ministership. It is shocking to find a temple visited by BJP, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and other Hindutva activists, visited regularly. To anyone, it would be shocking, but Nathuram Godse is revered in a temple as a holy man. There is no criticism of this temple. As I say, BJP and other organizations, Hindu organizations, visit this temple from time to time. Mahatma Gandhi is no longer a symbol of India. He has been replaced by a person, Vallabhbhai Patel. Vallabhbhai Patel was an activist of Hindutva movement, he was affiliated to RSS, to Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and now he replaced Mahatma Gandhi in the state ideology. The largest statue ever constructed in the world is now in Gujarat. This is the structure of Vallabhbhai Patel. I think it's 180 meters tall. It is several times higher than Jesus in Brazil, than this famous statue. It is unbelievably large. So again, these are the developments. Vallabhbhai Patel was an Hindutva activist. He fought as a politician, he fought for pure India, pure, that is, with no Muslims or Christians. Anyone may live in India, provided he or she follows the ideals and customs of Hinduism. Otherwise, there is no place for such people. That means these people either have to leave or have to be exterminated. And as I say, this is the dominant ideology in India, and this is sad. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope that Howard's hand is the... Would you like to say something now? Or that was a former hand? It's raised. Yeah, never mind. It's so anyway, we will continue next week with Asa Mwambene with the same kind of conversation, but this time we'll be focused on Africa. So thank you very much indeed for your time. It's been a pleasure seeing you again. Welcome again. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Much. Bye-bye.